It's absolutely wonderful to be with you all from a very rainy England and from a conference centre in England. I'm sure across to the warmth of your beautiful Caribbean island that is Barbados. Thank you, Marcia. It's amazing to think that we were together in Poland just 1 week ago, together with Laura, who I also see is on the screen there, and that what we discovered there was a shared love of God entirely, but also a shared love of God for our nations, for those that live in our nations, and actually that the things that you are facing in Barbados right now are things that we have been living through in the West. And I have been qualified as a barrister in England since 1988. And so there's a sense in which, for the whole of my practicing life as a lawyer, I have been facing some of the issues which are now very keenly felt in your island, in your country. Kendra, I want to say what a beautiful introduction that was. And I find it particularly moving, Kendra, that you went to the Praise Academy from the age of 4. From the age of 4, you've grown up in the Praise Academy. And how can it be that this time last week, or a Friday last week, you could be removed? That production that you have produced, which is straight up truth, which is art, which is fact, which is explaining a story, that could be removed from a national competition in your country. That is without the laws to do so. That is actually unlawful. But the point is, what often happens, and this is something I'd like to warn you all of that are listening in today, is that things often happen out with the law. Things often happen on the ground first. The culture shifts. The culture changes. The culture, first of all, marginalizes, and then it excludes. And what we're seeing there in that competition was the exclusion of Praise Academy. Why? Because it was actually touching the cultural hotspot. It was actually dealing with biological truth, male and female. It was dealing with how we are made. And one of the global cultural gospel touch points is actually, what is truth? What does it mean to be made in the image of God? Kendra, I was particularly touched because at age 4, I was put on a bus to go to Sunday school. And it was there that a Sunday school teacher introduced me to Jesus. And I fell in love with Jesus there and then. And I cannot remember a moment when I have not loved him. And so as we examine what I am going to say against what you are facing in Barbados and more widely in the Caribbean, but in the Barbados specifically, the Child Protection Bill, it's about the protection of our children. Can I say to all of you that are on the screen and joining in on this call, the protection of our children, the protection of a 4-year-old Kendra, the protection of a 4-year-old Andrea Minichiello. Do we want our children to be able to go into a Praise Academy? Do we want our children to be able to go into a Sunday school and be told that they're made in the image of God with a plan and a purpose, that they're made male and female, that marriage is between one man and one woman? Or do we want those things to actually become things that are deemed to be harmful, things that are deemed to be discriminatory, things that are deemed to be not in the best interests of the child? That such places as the Praise Academy could propagandize a child. In fact, the teachers at the Praise Academy need to think correctly. And unless they think correctly, they will be put on an equality and diversity course. In fact, if they are teachers, we will remove their very license to teach. That's actually exactly what's happening in the United Kingdom. And it doesn't always come in hard law. You see, this is happening first to you in the culture, even before, in a competition, even before it becomes the law. And this is why I'm saying to those of you that are Christians on this call and Christian leaders, Waco Church, arise, understand what it is that is coming your way and why it's really important that you understand the dangers of what is coming your way in order to keep Praise Academy of Dance operational in your country, in order to keep your Sunday schools operational in your country, in order to keep your schools, your Christian schools, operational in your country. Indeed, ultimately, your Sunday schools, indeed, in order to keep your very freedom to preach the gospel free in Barbados. I'm now just going to turn to a short presentation that I have for you. And I will be able to share this ultimately with Marsha, who can share it then across to the participants in this call. But it's to share with you just a quick history of what has happened in the United Kingdom. And I want you to be thinking of this against the backdrop of what you're facing in Barbados at this time, so that essentially, for you to understand, for the people that are listening into this call, to understand that it's the very freedom to shape the culture as Christian that's at stake, the very freedom to preach the gospel ultimately that is at stake. It's your children's lives and your Christian freedoms to be Christian and expressively Christian within Barbados that are at stake. I don't mean to sound... I may sound as if alarmist, but I have been 33 years qualified and I've lived this all in slow motion. I've lived this all year by year, day by day, year by year, in order to see it culminate where we are today. And what I want to say is that we need jewels in the crown. We need jewels in the Caribbean Sea that will shine bright lights to the rest of the world to say no to this Western agenda. No, actually, to this anti-Christian agenda. And I am praying that from this meeting today, we will see such a resistance formed. So let me share my screen for you. It's good to know from Psalm 2 that there is nothing new under the sun. The Bible speaks of it all. Do the nations conspire and the peoples plot in vain? Do the kings of the earth rise up and the rulers band together against God and saying, let us break their chains and throw off their shackles? So it's a tale as old as time when we plot in vain against the kingdom of God, against God himself. I will proclaim the Lord's decree. He said to me, you are my son, today I become your father. Ask me and I will make the nations your inheritance, the ends of the earth your possession. You will break them with a rod of iron. You will dash them to pieces like pottery. So really what God, I believe, is saying to you leaders in Barbados is that he wants to make the nation your inheritance. And he's saying to those that rule in your nation, you kings, be wise, be wise, be warned, you rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and celebrate his rule with trembling. Kiss Jesus, and your way, or he will be angry, and your way will lead to destruction. Blessed are those that take refuge in God. And so I'm saying, please take warning from what has happened in the United Kingdom, so that you will not go the way of the United Kingdom. Understand, as we are told, that in Colossians 1, Jesus should take prime place in public life, for he is truth. He is the image of the invisible God, and in Jesus, all things in heaven and earth, visible and invisible, holds together, because he is the ultimate truth. In the midst of this is something that is said to is attributed to Martin Luther. It says this: if I profess with the loudest voice and clearest exposition every portion of the word of God, except precisely that little point which the world and the devil are at that moment attacking. I am not confessing Christ, however boldly I may be professing him. Where the battle rages, there the loyalty of the soldier is proved, and to be steady on all the battle fronts besides is mere flight and disgrace if he flinches at that point. And I want to say to you, where is the battle raging in Barbados and in the Caribbean right now? Well, it is waging where it is waged in the West, because we are importing it to you. We are saying in return for aid, in return for favor, in return for a new constitution, by becoming a republic where all the laws come up for grabs, what happens next is that you will no doubt import a constitution that looks a little bit like Canada or the European Convention on Human Rights, which means that you will be importing into your nation the means by which an agenda has come in that strikes against God in a Psalm 2 fashion. Where the difficulties hit are around the protection of life, the pattern for family, and the place of Jesus Christ in public life. So in our recent history, this is the history of the United Kingdom. The Queen died last year. However, our nation is rooted historically in the Christian faith. And indeed, when King Charles came to the throne, he was asked, will you to the utmost of your power maintain the laws of God and the true profession of the gospel? He swore on the Bible, and he was presented with the Bible saying, this is the royal law. These are the lively oracles of God. But what has happened in the 70 years since the Queen came to the throne? Well, in 1952, abortion was illegal in our nation. Forgive me, because I've actually lost seeing all of you on the screen. I hope that you can all see me at this moment in time.
Yes, we're seeing you and hearing you loud and clear.
Perfect. And also homosexuality was illegal in 1952. Today, both are legal. When the Queen came to the throne, 4.8% of babies were born outside of marriage. Today, it's 51%. When the Queen came to the throne, 349,000 marriages with a population of 50 million in the United Kingdom. Today, there are 220,000 marriages with 67 million in the United Kingdom. When the Queen came to the throne, 34,000 divorces every year. Today, 115,000 divorces every year. That's a massive cultural shift in the space of 70 years. What we've seen culturally is a radical revolution in terms of radical sexual revolution with the contraception pill. In the 1950s and 1960s, no longer this notion, this cultural Christian notion of a man and woman being married and in commitment. So divorcing sex from marriage and therefore procreation from the purpose of marriage. And what happens then is that we create a need for abortion, because even with contraception, as we have seen, it doesn't stop babies coming, and we end up with a need created for abortion. And so what you've had in the United Kingdom is a massive rise in our nation of abortion. For the first year, 21,000 abortions, now 215,000 abortions every single year. And as of this year, around 10.2 million abortions have taken place since the passing of that act in 1967. That is a massive social revolution. That's a very bloody revolution indeed. And it's a revolution that's all occurred within the law. So that, here we see the wonderful images of babies in the womb. That then moves to a situation whereby we have in the United Kingdom today pills simply being posted to women in order to have their abortion. So life becomes dispensable because the law has not protected life in the United Kingdom. People that seek to help women reverse abortion pills are actually have their medical license taken away. I'm trying to demonstrate to you some of the things that happens when we let go of the Christian principle of the protection of life in its highest order. And with it, we begin to get the push to criminalize assisted suicide. And the reason why I tell you this is because if you don't protect life at the beginning of life, so then you begin to weaken it at the end of life. And here we have cases where doctors deem it in the best interests of this young woman, a 19-year-old who was fully compos mentis in her right mind, who said, I do not want my treatment withdrawn, but she had mitochondrial disease, but the doctor said, despite your parents not wanting your treatment to be withdrawn, and despite you not wanting your treatment to be withdrawn, you are deluded. And here is part of the judgment here, and this came in September, that you are actively dying and it's in your best interests to die. And I say this because in the Barbados Child Protection Act, it's the same language that is used. So beware of these terms. When the government says that the government decides what is in the best interest of the child, that will override what the parent says is in the best interests of the child. This is not even just with regard to sexuality issues, but to life itself, as we have seen in the case of Sadiqa. I know that I am rattling through this, and I'm rattling through it, and I hope that you are able to grasp some of the enormity of it. That term, best interest, is being used even this morning. In this case, this morning, a judgment came through from Lady Justice King, and she said that this child who's been offered treatment in Italy from England and could be moved today, they are saying it is in her best interests to die. And they are saying she is a ward of the state because the parents do not know best for her. I'm saying this because this is England, and this is how those words in law are being used, even to take the life of a child, where the government says, where the judges say it's not in that child's best interests, and the parents do not know best. And so then with fertility treatments becoming the norm, you then get a situation whereby, because it's now possible, and fertility treatments became a norm because we began to be able to create an experiment upon embryos. And that's why I've given you the whole abortion statistics and the fact if you don't protect life and think that you can make or take life when you want within your laws, you end up then creating family in your own image. And so what the West has done is they've made an idol of self, an idol of rights. And what we now have is the wholesale redefining in our laws of marriage. And here, Tom Daley, famous diver, and his LA producer husband, a very famous couple in the United Kingdom and beyond, of course, have 2 boys by surrogacy. And now in our law in the United Kingdom, it says this unit is entirely protected in law as a good. And if you say it is not, then Praise Academy, you will get removed from that stage. Then leader of the Praise Academy, then leader of the Sunday school, you will be removed or from that position until you think properly. So what we had in the United Kingdom is a whole series of laws in order to do this, but you will be getting this come through, your redefining of this through the Child Protection Bill. It will sound like it is kind. Kind language is always used. Benign language is always used. The best interest of the child, no discrimination on the grounds of homosexuality, of grounds of sexual orientation or gender. It will always sound kind, but what in the end it does is inhibit any declaration of Christian truth. It will view that, despite religious freedom being a protected characteristic as well, what we often find in the courts is that that gets trumped by sexual orientation rights. So what we had was, first of all, just this declaration at the turn of the century in the United Kingdom to say, all we want is rights as homosexuals. We do not want to be discriminated against. So the sexual orientation regulations were produced in 2003. Then in 2004, a Gender Recognition Act, which actually allowed for the legal recognition of a transsexual's acquired gender. So for the first time in law, government documents say something that is not true about the chromosomes, as with the XX and the XY. So you can actually change your government statistics. The Civil Partnerships Act was all meant to be just about rights for a same-sex couple just to have their rights registered. And many said they need to have their rights registered. But in fact, what it does is it totally upends family and family relationships. What this does is it undermines marriage. And what you then have is civil partnership being put on a par in law with marriage. And it very quickly becomes, as it did in our nation, same-sex marriage. And in fact, in the Caribbean, what you might well have is a shift, not first of all into civil partnerships or civil unions, but straight to marriage, straight to same-sex marriage. But it's not just marriage between two adults, because as I've demonstrated earlier, as a result of not upholding life laws and the introduction of fertility treatments, what you actually get is the family right redefined by ideology and reproductive technology to be two men, two women, a man and a woman, married, civilly partnered, with children, either naturally or by way of fertility treatments. All of those units are to be absolutely protected in law. And unless you protect them and say they are absolutely equivalent, if you say anything different, you will be subject to a discrimination claim. You may well be subject to discipline within the workplace. But this is where it really comes unstuck. And I'm speaking specifically to the leaders of the church. What is it that we then have in the United Kingdom? Well, we have this. And if you could just bear with me while I'm just calling in my colleagues to come and speak to you as well. Just bear with me. So this is our Archbishop of Canterbury, the senior cleric in the church in the United Kingdom. Back in 2013, he said it's clearly essential that stable and faithful same-sex relationships should, where those involved want it, be recognised and supported with as much dignity and the same legal effect as marriage. So there he conceded civil partnerships. Church, you must understand what it is that is happening when you actually begin to think that that's all just about rights. And then at the beginning of this year, he said that the church will bless same-sex marriage and civil partnerships. He will give special union status, special blessings to same-sex marriages. In November, we go into a synod in the Church of England where they will bless gay partnerships. Here we have a senior bishop, in fact, a bishop that is known for being evangelical. He actually has introduced liturgy to recognize a person who identifies as trans in their new gender with their new name. And then we have situations where in the Methodist Church, for instance, same-sex marriage is introduced. Furthermore, in our political system, and when you have conservative politicians saying that they support gay marriage, not despite being a conservative, but because they are a conservative, that becomes very serious indeed. And then we have the David Cameron at the time saying absolutely clearly that he's told the Bill team that he's going to export same-sex marriage and the bill across the world. And he's going to work with international partners. So that's international partners and structures that is coming to the Barbados, that is coming to the Caribbean, that comes to the to just excuse me for 1 second, Hannah. Could you just help me so I can see some of the participants here as well? I've got it on the full screen so I can actually see some participants. Thank you. I can now see you again. You've all been restored, or some of you, which makes me feel so much better because I was speaking straight to a screen. Thank you for your patience. But you see there that what you're seeing is our government working with the UN-led and UN member states organisations to support pride events, international days, equality offices in your countries in order to change the laws. And this will be all over your new constitution in Barbados. It will be all over it. And so you will go from where you are right now to a highly developed new constitution with all the historic jurisprudence and case argument of the past 40 years in the West. So your child protection bill is an entry bill. It's an entry bill in terms of the rights of the child, the rights of the parent, and how family is structured. That's why it's so important. And I'm here in order to warn you of that, so that you as the church are alive to this, in order, I pray, to resist it in these coming days. And I pray that it is not too late, but certainly in order then to resist civil partnerships, to resist same-sex marriage, to resist the weakening of laws around beginning and end of life protection, to understand that when non-governmental organizations come in, what they are doing is actually bringing with them this kind of philosophical and moral framework that commands allegiance or else punishment. I have someone who's just walked into the room right now, and I'm going to introduce him to you. This is a theology lecturer at a Methodist college, Aaron Edwards, who tweeted in support of marriage and against same-sex marriage, against homosexuality. And as a result of that, within a so-called evangelical college, a Methodist college in our country, he found himself suspended and sacked for gross misconduct. So Aaron, will you please speak to the people of Barbados and the Caribbean?
Yes, hello all. Nice to see you, and I'm so glad that Andrea is able to speak to you guys and to help input into some of the challenges you guys are facing, because they are tremendous, and we do need to help, Christians need to help each other across the world in all these sorts of ways. So yeah, I can, my situation, I guess you want me to talk about it a little bit, how it happened. So basically I tweeted in and around you may be aware of the Church of England discussing same-sex blessings, obviously incrementally trying to gradually push it until they can get same-sex marriage ratified in the Church of England. That's obviously the goal, but they're pretending it isn't. And I was noticing the amount of people who were arguing that this is inevitable, that we have to get over this. We just have to forget about our homophobic stance, which is what all the Christians have ever thought about homosexuality, what the Bible says very clearly about homosexuality. And what most of my students at Cliff College, especially those beyond the West, I had a lot of West African students who just saw this very obviously and clearly. And so I was very distressed to see the fact that I was now being told this is inevitable, get over it. We are going to bring gay marriage into the church and you need to accept it. And I wasn't prepared to accept it. So I started speaking about it publicly on podcasts and blogs. And for some reason, this one tweet went viral one morning on February the 19th, I think, earlier this year. And I said, homosexuality is invading the church. Evangelicals no longer see the severity of this because they are busy apologizing for their apparent homophobia. whether or not it's true. This is a gospel issue, by the way, because if sin is no longer sin, then we no longer need a savior. So I realized actually we can't say it's a secondary issue that doesn't matter, just sexuality. What God doesn't really mind as long as you have the gospel. Actually, this is about the gospel. This is about what sin is or isn't, what Jesus does or doesn't save us from. So that was my argument, but the college had already denounced me publicly. All these aggressive progressives jumped on the tweet. It went viral, and the college decided to suspend me and fire me despite being there 7 years, not having any formal disciplinary action before against me. So I was very surprised how quickly they could do it. And then all of that happened. So, you know.
And I mean, and it's so here you have a theology lecturer up in a Methodist college upholding Christian theology and truth around marriage, being sacked. And also you were reported to the counter.
Well, they were threatening to report me to Prevent, which is the UK government's counter-terrorism and hate speech, law for the tweet that I just quoted to you earlier. Yeah.
Thank you, Aaron, for coming in and joining me. We're at the conference together today, around 157 of us here here in the centre of England, but a resistance within the church. Thank you so much for joining me here, Aaron. It's great to be with you. So I think that there you can see that this is the reality, but it's not just that people. So for doing his job, he was sacked, and also, but it's not just that. It's we are living in an age of absolutely the threat of from our counter-terrorism organization. This man, the Christian, is such a threat that he's a threat to the very security of the nation. So, I mean, and I think that, again, our Department for International Aid talks about including sexual orientation and gender identity as part of the social impact analysis. So that's what they are doing across the world. At the time, our Deputy Prime Minister, when our same-sex marriage bill came in, said, I don't know what you're all worried about with this redefining of marriage. It's all going to become very normal. Well, it does for your children. And this is what I would talk about, the culture. It's come to the Praise Academy and they get removed because they're not getting with the programme. But this is our Department of Education, our state education. So see, I'm an LGBT champion, and you'll also see on the signature, it was a she and a her. But then these are the books that are in our schools. Daddy's Roommate, An Orgasm a Day for our teens. Heather Has Two Mummies and Tango Makes Three. Jack and Jim, King and King, Uncle Bobby's Wedding, Mummy, Mama and Me. Daddy and Daddy, Mummy and Mummy. My Princess Boy. He dances and he twirls. He plays with boys and girls. He loves his twinkly dress. Daddy and Daddy Penguin. King and King for children aged 8 to 9. Bailey loves his honeysuckle dress with little drops of honey and blossoms and twirls. Voices chanting, doggies panting. Age 10 to 11, looks just like Pride. This child, Casey, she was 10. She refused to participate in Pride. She was suspended from school for a week. She was then, her mother was visited by social services. She was reported to the police because of what she was teaching her child. This is true. This is actually true. We had to safe school Casey because she resisted participation in Pride, and that was deemed to be discriminatory, despite talking about her faith. I'd love to play you that video. I'd love to introduce you to her. It's true. But now I'm going to stop my video because I also have in the room a teacher, but I'm not allowed. This is part of what the state does as well, in the best interests of children. The state says, we're going to sack you, teacher. We're going to dismiss you, but you're not allowed to tell your story to the world. You're not allowed to identify. Hannah's not her real name. You're not allowed to identify yourself. You're not allowed to identify the area. You're not allowed to identify the school that has done this to you. So it's another mechanism, is to say because we have the best interests of the children involved and the school system involved generally, you have to be silent. So I'm going to, I can't breach that court order because we could go to prison. But I'm going to stop the video so that you can't see us. And now I'm going to introduce you to Hannah, not her real name. Hannah, you were a primary school teacher.
Yes.
Teaching what age of children?
I was year 4, so that's age 8, 9-year-olds.
Can I just ask everyone, can you put a thumbs up, Marsha, if you can hear as well? Perfect. And Marsha, one of the children in your class said that they were going to transition from being a girl to a boy.
Yes, I was having a child coming into my class. I had not been told about this child until after we'd broken up for the summer holidays. And then I was told there was a child who wanted to identify as a boy, so they would be using boys' facilities and so on. And we had to call them by their name and pronoun that they had chosen. And I refused to do that. So as a result of that, to cut a long story short, initially I was suspended for refusing to go along with what the school stated was a reasonable management order. I stated that I was a Christian and it went against my conscience. And I also stated that I believed it was harmful to the child. And we raised it as a safeguarding concern subsequently. I did get reinstated back into school with the help of the Christian Legal Centre. They argued a case that, you know, they were encroaching on my human rights and coercing me to go along with something that was against my conscience. But nevertheless, the safeguarding of the child was still at stake. And
bear in mind, this is a 9-year-old.
Yeah, this is a 9-year-old.
This is a 9-year-old that is acting out in the opposite sex, confused from a very traumatic background.
Very, very difficult background. And what we did do, and I have done, and I've read a lot of stuff even before we contacted the Christian Legal Centre actually about this, hearing lots and lots of testimonies of people who had detransitioned and said they'd been messed up as children and they'd made the wrong decision and how deeply they regretted this. Anyhow, I presented the school, the governors, the local authority with hundreds of pages of medical evidence demonstrating why this was not in the best interests of a child and likely to cause more harm than good. But the one thing that the school and the local authority seem to be afraid to do is to actually look at the evidence that's been presented or any kind of impartial decision about why this is harmful.
So we were producing evidence. I know that Laura Haynes is going to be speaking to you later, but we had banks of evidence from the kind of material that Laura has been producing over many years and is producing, and a number of experts, and we produced that to show there is a real safeguarding risk to affirming a child in their chosen gender. And then essentially what was happened because of that, because you reported the child to be there to be a safeguarding risk in terms of affirming her as a boy, you were then in fact suspended and then dismissed for gross misconduct.
Yes. But
it didn't end up there. It didn't just end, did it? With and they said because you breached confidentiality by taking this concern to lawyers. Yes. So by taking concerns that you had within a school to lawyers in order to raise a safeguarding complaint, this is a breach of confidentiality. And then what we had was a situation whereby you have to remain entirely anonymous, but they have then they are bringing an action against you to remove your teaching license entirely.
Yes, they are. Yeah. So they're going to do an investigation, and you know the Teaching Regulation Agency are carrying out an investigation to see whether I should be, struck off really from that. So I work very, very hard to be a teacher, and I think as a teacher I worked extremely hard. And they just want to take that job away from me completely and prevent me from actually being able to get any work in that area. So,
and I know, Hannah, that you are just absolutely motivated by the love of God.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
And love for your children.
Absolutely. And, you know, it has to be a step of faith. And I do believe that God spoke very clearly to me that it wouldn't necessarily mean that they're going to listen or that they're going to respond, but it's the right thing to do because it's the truth. And what we're trying to present them with is the truth. I think they're afraid of the truth, but yes, nevertheless, it's still the truth.
Thank you so much, Hannah, for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And you have spoken to many people there in the Caribbean, and I'm praying that they will hear from your testimony. Thank you. So I'm back, but can you see I'm even having to hide a teacher in the United Kingdom who has simply stood, actually for biological truth in this instance. 2 weeks ago, we had a teacher struck off who from the teaching regulation body for upholding the teaching of marriage in a classroom. Struck off. So this is actually what happened. There's another teacher again who, because of a Facebook post, pastoral assistant was removed. Drag queens are in, and people that raise concerns about what's going on. This is a parent raising a concern. She was forced to remove her child from the school. Groups, diversity groups are in. They'll be coming to you in the Caribbean, and chaplains are out. A chaplain who preached a Church of England sermon in a Church of England chapel in a Church of England school was removed from his position, reported also to the Counter Extremism Agency and also to the Teaching Regulation Agency, and the church itself has removed his permission to officiate. So, church, you need to stand strong at this point. You are a danger to children, Church of England tells school chaplain who said pupils could disagree with woke dogma. This is actually a Christian school that was so scared about failing the equality and diversity inspection, it hung up the trans equality flag in its library. One of our leading Christian schools in the country, an evangelical school, strongly until a couple of years ago. I'm doing this for you to be warned about what, even if you think you are strong or if you think it won't happen where you are, it will happen in a moment. Doctors who won't put on medical forms that a biological man is a woman, removed from their jobs. Judges removed from their jobs for saying children do best with a mother and a father. Social workers not permitted to do social work because they might discriminate against homosexuals. They don't discriminate against anyone. Politicians removed for putting things in favour of marriage on their manifestos. Bank accounts closed, and indeed this week, the Christian Legal Centre's bank account has been closed with no notice on Monday. We have other bank accounts from which we are operating. So actually your banking gets affected, your very ability to operate. I'm not scaremongering. All of this is true. I'm giving you testimony. I've got two people who are with me today at this conference. This is all true. It is all documented. So we need you to stand in the Caribbean. We're seeing resistance. In law, in the British Virgin Islands, we're assisting there. In South Korea, we've assisted, and we've seen a pushback on civil partnerships and same-sex marriage. Shirley, I know that she will be speaking with you, I believe, today. They are resisting in Jamaica. You must join forces in the Caribbean and resist together. I see that Bishop Nicholas Sykes is on the call, and I really long to I really long to see resistance generally across your region. And in a sense, I now feel sad that I haven't come in before. I've been very much loved you from afar and loved Shirley and loved Bishop Sykes. But I'm going to say sorry now if I didn't help you 10 or 15 years ago in the way that I should have, if I didn't see how it comes to you after it's played out. You get to a place where people are threatened with prison simply for speaking on a radio as advertising conversion therapy because they say that they are changed. The risk of being criminalized comes next. So the solution is what we're doing today. The solution is for you to keep your Christian schools, is for Praise Academy to keep going louder and stronger, for the church and leaders in the church to understand what I'm saying today. I've whistled through it, so it's very fast, but to understand that the Child Protection Bill is about all of this agenda, and to say to you that we can equip you. We've done a lot of the legal argumentation. We've got a lot of the theory and a lot of the evidence. And we know that in 2 Chronicles, it says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and I'm going to heal their land. And I'm praying that for Barbados, Jamaica, the Virgin Islands, the Cayman Islands, for you in the Caribbean. I am praying that courage is the flower of conviction. And I pray that you will understand that the protection bill is, in a sense, the Child Protection Bill is a picture of everything that I've just outlined. And when that yields, and when it yields in terms of the position of the state vis-a-vis the family, vis-a-vis the parents and the parents' role, vis-a-vis the child, when marriage is undermined, when the equality agenda gets put in, then you end up with this absolute assault actually on God's gift of life, God's pattern for family, God's place of Jesus Christ, the gospel itself. So I pray that you will awake and arise as God's people in Barbados and beyond. Thank you so much for your time today.
Wow. Thank you so much, Andrea Williams. God led us to go to Poland, open that door at the IFTCC conference for us to meet you. And Davida Maynard Holligan is on, and she was there with us, a lawyer here in Barbados. And I just want to thank her, just for the company of being there and we both, when we heard you, we knew that you had to speak to Barbados and the Caribbean. Let's go over now to Imari Brown.